Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. The first major change of the off-season has been announced. Boston Breach have decided not to extend the team option of TJHaLy, leaving him as a free agent in the Rostermania period to come. Who's going to be his replacement? Who might Boston have in mind? And where is TJ going to go next? Or is he actually going to get a spot back in the CDL for next season? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Really upset the channel. Thanks very much indeed for doing that one. Plenty to discuss. Rostermania, of course, in full swing. Crone, I'm sure, is thinking about what these roster moves might potentially be. There are, of course, some rumours going around which teams might be considering what players. But yes, confirmations will be coming through today and maybe in future days as well. Because in a couple of days' time, well, actually tomorrow, I believe at midnight, I think it is when, well, any players that aren't extended are officially free agents anyway. Now, they can't sign for just over another week, but they can at least talk to teams. So first of all, this is good, really, that Boston announced this so early for TJ because it means he's got the maximum possible time to talk to teams about offers that might already be considering other players. The other thing that's going on right now, of course, just wanted to mention quickly on the subliners, if they'd have placed a little bit better at the World Championship, you can see a world in which they stuck together, but to me, top 6 probably not going to cut it. They might have to choose either Hydra or Crimsix to give the bag to build around. Like, probably Hydra's the one they're going to choose. Maybe he wants a team with Crim anyway, so we'll see what happens there, but I kind of doubt that team is going to stay together. Seems very unlikely, all things considered. But I mean, Paul X just wanted to mention this because I kind of learned my lesson from the other day where Methodz did a tweet and I didn't screenshot it. I've got this one right here from Paul. This is like this is vintage off-season type stuff. We'll see more of it here in a second of players tweeting stuff that may or may not be related at all to Rostermania. But he says, "Feel so lost, man. I don't even know what to do anymore." So maybe he's been informed that you know, they're not extending his team option or whatever. Maybe that's not the case at all. But in fairness, the players could well know that they're not getting extended before he gets announced publicly, at which point they can still talk to other teams even if it hasn't been said on Twitter, which of course it has for TJHaLy in this case. But yeah, maybe they should keep Paul, maybe they shouldn't, I'm not really sure. But still, the teams have options on any player that isn't a free agent. So most players are in a situation where they signed a new deal last year or in the middle of this season, and therefore the team gets the choice as to whether they keep them for another year or not on the 1+1 type contract. Now, some players are at the end of the 2-year deal, the 1+1 has now ended, and therefore they're officially free agents, and that type of stuff may or may not get announced over the coming days, just because if you're London, you're not necessarily going to say, okay, bye-bye Afro, you're a free agent, if you want to try and re-sign him anyway to a new deal regardless. Now, this from Marky B, because well, a kind of a gif here from Braveheart, Scottish kind of historical war drama. Now, this is kind of interesting because Marky B, of course, himself is Scottish, but also so is Cammy, right, on his team. Now, I do wonder whether this is anything to do with that. Of course, like, this is classic reading into gifs type stuff, but it was kind of strange that he would tweet this out just given the circumstances that's currently going on with Toronto and the rumours that they're, of course, making at least one change. Now, the rumour had it that Cammy was going to go for Scrappy and maybe Bance is going to go as well, and CleanX and Inside are going to be the two guys sticking around. Maybe they make a different idea come up. Maybe Cammy isn't, in fact, a free agent after all, and maybe it's Inside that's gone for Scrappy, but even that, I'm not really sure I like that. But then again, I don't really like dropping Cammy, so I think it's a really tough job that Toronto have to decide what they're going to do there. Now, this also from Bance, I'm going to lose my job. So, I mean, yeah, put this out, and this is a strange one as well. So I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Bance does like a little bit of baiting and stuff on Twitter, but I very highly doubt that Ultra are going to stay together, and surely Bance and maybe Cammy are the two top targets on the chopping block there. It's a bit of a strange one. Like, it'd be kind of weird if Bance tweeted this out, and in fact, yes, he is getting dropped, all things considered, but maybe there's other options out there for him, right? I did talk the other day about the possibility of, I mean, even, you know, Zero replies with this, and yeah, it's a possibility, right, that maybe Bance and Zero could team up again as they did back in the day on the London team, for example. I think that would be interesting, just because London, of course, they have an awful lot of talent on the team, and they still do if they keep the same roster, but they struggled heavily on LAN this year, there's no doubt about it, and I'd like to see them try and address those LAN weaknesses rather than London just kind of hoping that they miraculously improve going forwards with a bit more experience for the team. Bringing a guy like Bance in whatever role you wanted to do and whatever you wanted to rejig the rest of the players, because even Nastie, Gismo, like Nastie especially, could probably run a flex if he was required to, so like there's some options out there that maybe bringing in Bance helps a bit more with LAN experience, maybe leadership as well in those type of situations. Could be an interesting option if he is a free agent to at least consider if you are London, right? So I guess we'll see how this one goes, but Bance is implying that he's lost his job, and we would imagine that Scrappy's going to come in, one of the most exciting prospects, no doubt, from Changers. If you are going to bring him in, you've really got to do it for either Cammy or Insight. There was some people saying that, okay, get rid of Bance, put Cammy on an SMG, and then have Scrappy and Insight, but yeah, to me that seems like too much of a risk. I think if I'm building a team as a GM or something, I want to have at least 2 players that are comfortable running full-time SMGs if that's kind of what the meta requires. And having Cammy on a full-time SMG is probably a bit too much of a risk, but yes, difficult questions for the Toronto team to answer. Let's talk then about what Boston Breach are doing. Of course, we've seen some confirmations the last few days. For example, Los Angeles Grillers getting rid of Coach Bevels. But yes, TJHaLy, they've announced yesterday that they are not extending the team option on his contract. So I guess they immediately knew, or maybe they've known for quite some time, that they're not planning to keep TJ. Good, really, that Boston are looking to upgrade. They had a good first season, all things considered. Came in last minute, picked up a decent team, got some pretty good results with the team. I think they came, top 3 back at Major 2. And then, of course, not great finish to the season, but they made a good change. They got Vivid in. They managed to finesse him off Florida because Florida, for some reason, let him go and still made the World Championship right tomorrow. Game 5, round 11 away from beating Thieves in the very first round, as we'll see here in a second. But TJ, all things considered, hasn't been the player that he has been in the past this season. He was running a flex, of course, this year. Usually he's been the kind of aggro or slaying SMG player. Now he's slowed down a bit into the flex role, but as still the inconsistent traits of him the last couple of seasons have tended to carry through. So they say the Breach will be forever grateful to TJ as a founding member and champion of our brand. You'll always have a place in Breach history, but they waste no time in getting rid of him. And Dent, of course, the general manager, says decisions at this time of year are never easy. TJ was an imperative part of the team, a great player, a great person. We got very close. We'll always remember this season and the memories made. But as TJ says, appreciate everything the Breach has done. Really wish we could have got more done this year. Looking forward to the future and officially confirming, yes, he is indeed a free agent for the upcoming 2023 season. So 2 sides of the story here. What do Breach decide to do? Where does TJ potentially go as a result? This also just to mention here, because as Methodz says, my brother, 1 round in the reply. It's kind of interesting that they would mention this because, of course, like if there are 2 players that are potentially on the chopping block here for Boston Breach, if they wanted to go for a double upgrade, and I am kind of tempted to think that they will, but I mean, who knows, I suppose. I put that tweet out a while ago doing my kind of like a Boston dream, not dream team, but it's kind of theoretical roster build, and I had, I think, Temp coming in for TJ and Clayster coming in for Methodz, maybe to just get a bit more out of those younger guys, but I mean, there's many other options out there as well. Maybe an Awakening type figure could be an option if he's a free agent from the Florida Mutineers, as it seems like he is. And then ARs, I think you can go a number of different ways. You can keep Zin. If you want to get rid of Zin, then you probably have to go for another player that has a lot of brand power. Clayster could be an option in that case. So there's a few things that they could do here, Boston, but I feel like going for the double role upgrade in some way or another. And even they could try and go for that in the SMG department as well. There might be some other players out there they could get instead of either Nero or Vivid, or even Capsidal is still sitting there on the bench. We don't want to forget about Capsidal too heavily just because he was very good the first part of the season. I guess they thought he wasn't playing quite the right way, and when Vivid came in, they decided, okay, well, Vivid's an option here, we might as well get rid of one of our SMGs, and they thought at the time that Capsidal was the one, I guess, being least impactful, and they make that move. But still, Capsidal could be an option for this team or for other teams going forwards as well. Maybe he'll just sit there on the bench. But Methodz kind of showing some solidarity with TJ right here, because of course that was the round that if they win this round, and in fairness, they can't really be too mad about losing this round because the way they played it was just pathetic. They just toted up and did nothing, and then eventually ran down the middle of the map into bottom church and just got picked up by Thieves. And this series was weird anyway, just because like there was a 2-hour delay or something right before this series, and no one got even time to warm up. So I feel like if there was more normal circumstances before this series, like Boston would have probably lost more comfortably. But I mean, still, Thieves end up winning it in a game 5 round 11, and the rest is history at that tournament. Could have been a very different story, of course, if Boston actually went on to win that game. But these are the stats from at least the last couple of matches. So I looked to the Major 4 qualifiers, the Major 4 itself, and the World Championship, just to look at all the matches where Vivid played, right? Because obviously, like if you're comparing a different team dynamic with TJ in, but his stats are pretty similar regardless. 0.89 in hard points, not really going to cut it as a flex. Engagement figures are okay. Hill time figures are pretty good. I mean, Search and Destroy, he was still pretty solid this year. Actually, was their best Search and Destroy player from a KD perspective since they brought Vivid into the team. Control was not great either. So yes, in the respawns, TJ has generally just been too inconsistent. As an SMG back in the day, he was a powerhouse back in World War II and even back in Advanced Warfare and stuff like that. Black Ops 4, he was pretty solid for the OpTic team as well. But since then, hasn't quite been the same player. Changed roles a couple of times. This time, of course, was in the flex position, and that's Vivid and Nero in the SMGs. So what do Boston do in terms of a replacement? Cammy, I'm sure, is someone they're probably going to try and talk to if they can. Like, if Cammy is there as a free agent flex player, that's like a no-brainer upgrade, I think, that you try and go for. Does Cammy, though, want to go to Boston? Is that his best option? Like, Cammy might have way better options out there, possibly, in terms of teams that he might think can actually compete for a championship. Because even if Boston make these upgrades, can they win a championship? I don't know. I think they get better, though, by making the changes that they are planning to make. Vivid and Nero, I think, on their day can be a top 4, top 3 SMG duo in the game, at least in terms of straight impact. And that is enough with good pieces around around them to get some good results. So maybe Cammy's an option. I think, as I said, Awakening could be a player to look at as well in terms of a flex position. And then they have to answer the question, what do they do about their SMG duo, right? Hydra is a free agent. Afro is a free agent. I think that if you're Boston and you're taking this seriously, you will at least phone those guys up and say, well, hey, what about bringing them in? Because still, the SMG duo in Vivid and Nero could potentially be upgraded. And also then the AR role, right? Methodz, of course, brings a lot to the team, but I think a lot of people have said, how much impact does he actually have despite his stats looking rather good, and doesn't necessarily have the greatest history of performing great against maybe the absolute top dogs. So, it's an interesting one to me. I think I would be intrigued to see what Clayster could do with these younger guys, but there's not that many better options out there because a lot of these ARs aren't necessarily free agents, and a guy like Attach, you might want to be a main AR, even though he kind of says he wants to be a flex, will probably get maybe more attractive options. So Boston have to answer that question because we might find out over the coming days that they release another free agent, right? They released TJ yesterday from his team option. They might announce another one today or over the coming days as well. So I wanted to look at then TJ's prospects going forwards because frankly, no team above Boston in the World Championship standings is going to want to get TJ, right? You look at FaZe, Thieves, like New York, OpTic, Surge Ultra, like they're not going to go for TJ. London, of course, aren't going to go for TJ either. So really it only leaves the teams below, I think, Boston this season, that being one of which being Florida. Florida is maybe the most likely option out of these, to be honest, because they don't tend to like SMGs. If TJ was to go back to an SMG role, or even like Awakening was to go to Boston and TJ was to go the other way as a flex, that might work as well, potentially. It depends what mutinies want to do and how much ambition they have in terms of getting maybe they pick up a challenges guy that is more of an unknown kind of quantity. Then TJ has kind of been a pretty known, underwhelming player, in fairness, the last couple of seasons. Gorillas aren't going to go for TJ, I would doubt. Minnesota Rocker seems unlikely as well, because Rocker want to be a team that's punching above the Boston breach, right? So if they see Boston dropping TJ, they're not going to think, oh, well, yeah, if we pick up TJ, we're going to be better than Boston. Like, it seems unlikely. So, of course, the only alternative really is the Paris Legion or the Vegas Legion retirement home, where he might end up alongside Temp, right? Who knows? That's probably, like, Vegas Legion, whatever, they probably will give him an offer for the minimum next season if he wants to play. The other thing that I did want to mention is the possibility of him just going to a bench spot, right? And him sitting on the sub bench somewhere. And I was thinking actually about the OpTic bench, because the OpTic bench is not particularly well refined. We saw that General isn't really a good substitute player, because if anyone gets injured or unwell or whatever that's not Dashy, then he just can't replace them, right? General cannot replace a Shotzzy, Scump, or an Illy, and Prolute maybe can do a decent job, but TJ could be a greater substitute player, I think, for a team like OpTic, because, like, if TJ's needed to, he can run an aggro sub, can run a slaying sub, can run like a flex role if he needs to. Like, he can replace the majority of roles on that team, and he's not going to do a spectacular job, but he's going to do a solid job, and he's also got history playing with Dashy and Scump back in the day in the Black Ops 4 season. Like, I managed to find this tweet here from Crimsix when he was teaming with TJ and Scump and Dashy and co back in Black Ops 4 as well a couple of years ago, right? So yeah, what do you think happens to TJ here? Does he just go to Vegas, like, or the Paris Legion spot as it currently is? Is there a better offer for him out there, or does he end up in a sub spot, like maybe a Classic or someone like that, or a Prestinni that's kind of just waiting for another opportunity and tries to prove themselves in challenges to get a spot back on the starting team? Just to finish off with this as well, I thought you guys might find kind of interesting as Chrome puts together total tournament earnings per team over the last 3 seasons since the inception of the CDL. This honestly is an absolute mess. I feel bad for Roosevelt putting this together, because look at this, right? You've got the Huntsman, you've got OpTic Texas, OpTic LA, OpTic Chicago, because you can't really combine them, right? Because Los Angeles Thieves took the OpTic Gaming LA spot, but like, you can't really combine them because they're different ownership groups. And then Empire is effectively combined with OpTic Chicago to become OpTic Texas, so it's kind of a mess. But I mean, yeah, FaZe have by far and away the most earnings, 4.1 mil. Empire, if you kind of include their tenure with OpTic Texas, they're looking pretty good as well. But yes, even Thieves, after just winning their one world championship, they're already 4th on this list. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.